I think it's essential to refer to real film openings because it includes many types of conventions and stereotypes that's common in film openings. The opening of our film was based on the crime genre, and our research was key in helping us understand it. We analysed different types of crime films, and we focused on things such as the mise en scène, sound and characters. We also made prezzies about the conventions of film openings, which explained what actually happens in a film opening. This research contributed to the decisions we made and informed our coursework. We used many conventions that came from our research. We found out that majority of the time the main characters are introduced and mise en scène and sound are used to portray the type of character that they are. For example, in Rush Hour, when Carter's introduced, he's wearing a police suit and he's dancing in the middle of the road while he's at work. There's also a high-tempo soundtrack that shows that he's a funny character and isn't as serious as others. However, when Lee is introduced, he's in a car. The mise en scène such as the formal suit he's wearing and the limousine represent him as a mature and more serious detective than Carter is. So for our first draft, we chose to have both of our detectives present in the opening scene. From our research, we found that most cop films have two characters, and most of the time they are contrasting characters. One will be serious and one will be funny. We used a variety of shots to help reinforce the contrast in our characters. For example, we used a series of close-ups on our main character's features, for example his shoes, which shows that he's dressed formally, which will reinforce his character. Similarly, we used a long shot to show his suit, which also emphasized the detective as being a serious and mature person. But what we did with his sidekick is we placed him in the film opening because we needed longer shots, and we used the donut to show his comical side. Our research also told us that most crime film openings, the killer or villain is introduced, or at least glimpses of them are shown. For example, in the opening of Seven, there was many close-ups of the villain's hands. Similarly, in the opening of Batman Dark Knight, Joker is a villain and he's introduced in the beginning. Initially, we decided to also start our villain in the opening so the audience will be familiar with most of the main characters. But we wanted to make the audience more curious and suspicious, so we made the villain cover himself up with black clothes, gloves and a mask. However, we changed this in the edit and decided to show even less of the villain. I think that it worked because it made the opening much more mysterious and gave a tense feeling to the audience. Another convention that we noticed was that in lots of crime films, the woman is most of the time the victim. For example, in Rush Hour, the little girl got kidnapped. This emphasized her vulnerability. We tried to conform to this stereotype of women being weak and vulnerable while men are much more strong and dominant. So we chose a female to be the victim that's killed by the villain. Similarly, we used a male character to play the villain because we found out that males are portrayed as strong and powerful characters rather than women. We also conformed to the idea that heroes are often played by male characters, so we used male detectives who are hungry to find out who the killer is and to put him into prison. Looking back at this, I don't think it was a positive thing to do because it's quite a negative interpretation of women. Maybe we should have had at least one of the cops as a female, which may have challenged the stereotypes of women being vulnerable and weak. Originally, we were going to subvert the stereotypes in terms of casting to aim for a unique selling point. We had a black male as the main detective, so he can be portrayed as a mature upper-class detective and in a league of his own, and a white male as a sidekick to subvert stereotypes of certain crime films. During our research, we analysed the openings of Django and Cop Out. They both had a black male as a sidekick, while the white male was the main detective who was more superior than the black male. This stereotype made the black male look inferior, so we decided to subvert it. We decided in order to intertextualize with the well-known films, we would conform to the stereotype after receiving feedback from our first draft. We did, however, subvert the main cop by making him an Asian guy. We did this only because we lost our actor and Rahat was available. However, looking back I think that we made a good decision by choosing Rahat because it shows that we have different ethnicities in our film. However, it may have alienated our audience. When you make a media product, you are representing a particular group of people. So if you decided to have men in your media product, then you are representing males. By the time we made our final film opening, we had a mixed cast which consisted of mostly men, one female and a range of ethnicities. If I examine this closer, I can analyze how we represented the different groups. Obviously, this is just a film opening, so it's a small extract of the whole text. Therefore, representation in this section would be limited to the few characters that we had in our opening. Ethnicity was a particular social group that we represented. The main ethnicity that is shown in our film opening was black characters. We had two black characters, the detective and the photographer. We showed them as having a funny side to them even though they are mature. Perhaps this was a bit stereotypical for them to be the jokers and the comical guys. However, we have cast them as being professionals and having jobs, which is more of a positive representation. Another particular social group that we represented was gender. We emphasized the vulnerability of females by using a female as our victim. We also chose men as our detectives, which is stereotypical gender view that men should appear dominant and much more heroic. Overall, using conventions from real media, i.e. real films, has been the most influential factor in the making of our product.